on screen like this, you can control how big that is. So in here, I have my image pages, and if I want a larger image, I can just drag this. It's going to update the template for me. And get rid of that border. Then when you're on this, you can tell it what to include. You want to include a title or a caption if we happen to have one. These images aren't tagged with titles and captions, so you don't see anything showing up. And we can also do watermarking. So I have my Best of Ben badge that I put on most of my images. You can automatically tag them. The metadata, I can tell it what to include. I might not want to include everything because I might not want people to know what kind of camera I use, what my shutter speed was, or any of that other info. But I definitely want my contact info in my copyright, so I'll set that. And then down at the very bottom, here's where you can set up an FTP server. So if you have a domain name and you have a server that's hosting that domain name, you can come in here, and if you click, you can have a list of settings because you might have more than one site that you manage. And if you choose Edit, here's the information it would need to log into a server. So if you know the URL, the web address for your server, you could type it in, your username and password. You can store the password in your preset so you don't have to type it in each time. Or if you leave that off, it will ask you for a password every time you try to upload so that someone else in your office or home can't do it without knowing the password. Here's the server path to where you want that to be stored. It might not be on the main level of the FTP site. It might be in a different folder. So anyway, if you set that all up, then you can go to the top here and say Save Current Settings as a preset. And you can do that for more than one server if you manage more than one site. If, on the other hand, you don't have a server, instead someone else manages that for you, you can also export it as a folder where you can give it to somebody else, or you can manually upload it yourself if that's what you prefer. But if you have your FTP server set up, hitting the upload button in the lower right will upload your website automatically. You can also take this website and preview it in a web browser. If I click that, it's going to resize all these images, sharpen them, create all these layouts and all the files, and then open it in a browser. I'm not going to click that right now because that can take a good amount of time. You'll see a progress bar in the upper left, and you might be sitting there for 5 minutes, depending on how many images you have. But if you just want to try it out, make sure that it's good before you upload it, that's what you can use. Otherwise, you can click Export down here, and it will just ask you for a location, and it would save all the files on your hard drive. But that also takes a good amount of time because it's going to scale down all the images and such. That's why it's nice being in here and being able to preview your gallery without having to export it or get it in a browser to begin with. Once you're done creating a gallery, just above the gallery preview is a choice called Create Saved Web Gallery. If I choose that, then I can type in a name, and I can tell where it should go. These are my various collection sets. You know how we have collections in the library? And before we had saved, what did we save? Before we had saved something. Oh, thank you. Before we had saved print settings that we had set up and other things as collections, and we can do the same thing here. And so I'm just going to put it on the top level so it's easy to see and say, oh, my Iceland gallery. If I'm worried about this changing, if I edit those images, I could say make virtual copies of all the images automatically so that any changes I make to the original files wouldn't affect what is used here, but I might want them to update. So I'm going to hit Create, and now if I look over in my library and I look over where the collections would be, there is a collection. It looks like a little grid here, and that represents a web gallery. It tells me how many images are used within it, and if I ever want to get back to that web gallery to make changes to it, there's just an arrow pointing towards the right, which would send me back into the